and informal, and it doesn't matter into the middle of it. It won't be the end of the world. Just to kind of get things going. So for those who don't know me, I'm Karen Ironside. I'm the Charity Services Manager at the Clare Foundation. I think I saw from the attendee list, I think we know most of the charities that are attending today, but there's a couple of people that we've not met yet. So nice to meet you guys. We are what we call an infrastructure charity. So we're a charity that supports other charities, our non-profits, to be as impactful as they possibly can be. And you would like to, then more than happy to email and we can have a chat and I can tell you a bit more about what we do. So this is the first of a series of about 7 or 8 speakers designed for middle leaders or whatever the in your organization. They're intended to be, as much as one can when you do it over Zoom, of course, to be quite chill. So bring along your coffee, or as I said earlier, a glass of wine. I'm not going to complain, and just relax. If you want to chat, ask questions, there's going to be regular opportunities to ask questions throughout. If you want to see what other sessions we're doing, I put the link on the screen there, and I also emailed that out to all of you earlier. And I'm trying to multitask. I'm trying to admit somebody at the same time, and my mouse appears to have vanished. But yeah, so it's going to be quite chilled. Our speaker today is Fran Borg-Wheeler, who is the Director of Heart-Centered Leaders and previous CEO of Youth Concern Aylesbury. As we know, today's session is all about kindness, which is very apt because it is Mental Health Week and kindness is the theme of Mental Health Week. Fran, shall I hand over to you?
Wonderful. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak. I feel honoured, and it's really lovely to see you all today virtually, and that you've been happy to sign up to this hour, even though you're probably all spending lots and lots of time on screens. So thank you. It's great that you're here. For those of you who don't know me, as Karen said, I'm Fran, and I started working in the voluntary sector.
You say I'm doing a webinar. It's stopped anyway, isn't it?
Hello, Denise.
Hi, sorry, my phone just rang. I was asking my husband to deal with it. Sorry.
I was just introducing myself.
Sorry.
You know me anyway. I was just saying that I started working in the voluntary sector 30 years ago, which makes me feel extremely old. Initially as a volunteer for what they called underprivileged kids in those days, and then for young homeless. And then I ditched my plan to be a barrister and decided that charity work was what was calling me. And I became a support worker for adults with mental health issues and learning difficulties. And most recently, as Karen said, I was CEO of Youth Concern for 13 years. So my passion for mental health is both personal and professional. On a personal level, I experienced severe clinical depression and anxiety for several years in my mid-20s, and narrowly avoiding a psychiatric unit admission. And also, my mum suffered many years of depression and undiagnosed. She was orphaned at a very young age, and when she was adopted, she suffered years and years of physical abuse. So it's always been very close to my heart, mental health. And since I left Youth Concern, I have set up Heart-Centered Leaders to support third sector leaders to be even more impactful whilst taking good care of themselves. And I'm doing that at the moment via leadership coaching, consultancy and training. So today I've chosen to explore the theme of kindness in leadership, as it's the theme of Mental Health Awareness Week. And what an appropriate theme for our times. With coronavirus dominating our thoughts and seriously impacting our clients and staff as well, and also our ability to deliver our charitable services, I believe that we're all being called to demonstrate kindness in leadership more than ever before. So that's kind of gives you a little bit of a background to why we're focusing on that. And I thought we'd start with a game. We all like a bit of game, I hope. And this is called, What is the Thing I'm Thinking About? So the idea is that I'm going to have a word in my head, which is an object. It's not something sort of vague like kindness. It's an actual thing you can touch. And you guys are all going to ask me a question to try and guess what that object is. And I can only say yes or no as an answer. Now, if you get to the point where you think you know what it is, you can use your guess to say, is it a whatever? And if we kind of take it in turns to go round, if you could also introduce yourself, that would be amazing. So if we could introduce yourself and then ask me a question about the thing that I'm thinking of, that would be fab.
I'll step in here, Fran. So I'm going to direct people to be the first to go, otherwise it's going to get chaotic. Then you're top of our list. You want to introduce yourself and have a guess, a question.
Did you say me, sorry? Or?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Rebecca. I'm an NCS project leader at the charity Action for Youth. Are you a human, Fran?
I don't know about that, Bex, but what the thing I'm thinking of is not a human.
Okay, thanks.
Jen, you're up next.
Oh, am I up?
Yep.
Okay. Hi, my name's Denise. I'm a trustee of Youth Concern, but I also own, well, I don't own, a manager service which provides accommodation for care leavers so that they can learn to be independent. They can learn all their skills, what it's like running a tenancy before they actually have to deal with one. That's what we're aimed to do. And my question to Fran is, can I eat it?
Not very tasty.
Cheryl, you're up next.
Cheryl.
Yep.
Yeah. My name is Cheryl. I'm a policy officer at Buckinghamshire Council. Is your object a piece of furniture?
No, I'm afraid it isn't, Cheryl.
Okay, who did I have up next? Who have I just undone? Jeanette.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Jeanette. I'm chair of a trustees board, which is a charity called Odyssey Challenging Cancer. I also, I'm a running coach for a community initiative, which is a women's only social running group to help them enjoy activity and to feel proud of themselves. My question is, are you dead?
So it's not, you may have missed that question at first, it's not a human being.
Oh, okay. Okay. Is it an animal then?
No, it isn't an animal.
Helen, you're up next. You want to unmute?
Hi, so I'm Helen Mee. I work alongside Karen at the Clare Foundation. My question is, would we find you outside?
Oh, that's a good question. Sometimes, but you'd be attached to somebody if you were outside.
Jax, you're up next.
Yeah. We've got two of us in the office. There's an echo. If you mute yours. Yeah. Let me mute and I'll go round to hers. I'll go round to Joe's. Am I muted? Why is it echoing?
Technology, eh?
Yeah. 2 meters distance. So I'm Jack from the Oasis Partnership, and my question is, oh, it's horrible. Do we have to plug you in?
No.
No.
No. Good guess though. Good question.
Okay. Katie, you're up next.
Hi, I'm Katie. I'm a policy and strategy officer at Buckinghamshire Council. So my question is it good to play with?
No.
Karma, you're up next.
I'm Karma Wager. I work in the locality service at Buckinghamshire Council. My question is, can you be held in one hand?
I was practicing this on my husband, and I said to him no. And when I told him what it was, he goes, yes, you can hold it in your hand. So I'm going to say yes.
Okay.
And Joanne.
Hi everyone. I work for the Oasis Partnership and I'm homeless outreach. My question is it small?
Oh, it depends. You can get small ones, you can get large ones. I'll give you a clue now, depending on the size of the person.
Vanessa, you're up next.
Hello there, my name is Vanessa LaRue and I'm a Senior Project Manager with Transitions UK, and we're a charity that support young people with disadvantages. So for instance, care leavers, young people learning disabilities, those at risk of youth offending and mental health issues. My question is, does it have a smell to it?
Some of them can be a bit smelly.
So if you think you know what it is, let's have a couple of guesses before we move on. You can.
And I might give you a clue.
Are you a dog?
No, but good guess. It's man-made.
Anyone got any guesses?
And
Is it a
maybe
sun
I was
hat?
a bit. No, but you're getting closer now.
Are you a coat?
No.
Are you a pair of shoes?
Yes, I'm a pair of trainers.
Awesome.
Well done. Who got that right? Cheryl. Well
Yes.
done. Okay, I'm going to do a slightly easier one now. We don't have to do the introductions at the same time. So this yeah, I won't give a clue. There's one more. So I'm thinking of something else now.
Anyone who wants to ask a question, crack on. Just unmute yourself and mute yourself afterwards.
Are you an animal?
No.
Is it alive?
No.
Do I find it in my house?
I hope so.
Are you part of a human?
No.
You whine.
Yes. Well
You, Katie.
Excellent. I think we'll leave it at that, shall we, Karen? Is that my 15 minutes? Yes.
Bang on the timing we said as well.
Fantastic. Well done, Katie. So, on the theme of kindness, initially I just wanted to tell you 3 short anecdotes which I think demonstrate the power of kindness in leadership. And the first one relates to me. I mentioned in my introduction that in my mid-20s I had clinical depression and anxiety. And ironically, I was a mental health support worker at the time. And I found it very difficult to eat, sleep, look anybody in the eye. And for those of you who know me, you may find this difficult to believe, but I found it difficult to talk. And I decided when I was prescribed with some very heavy medication that I needed to go and speak to my manager at the time, lovely lady called Judith. And when I spoke to her, I still remember how she responded to me with kindness. And she said, I trust you, Fran, to tell me what you can and can't do. And if you ever need to talk, I'm here. And that was it. And I felt valued, and I knew at that point that I could trust her. And it really sort of put the power back with me to be able to make those decisions for myself about what I felt I could do and what I felt I couldn't. So that's the first one. The second one relates to a young man that I'm currently coaching. He works within the charity sector, and he has post-traumatic stress disorder due to abuse that he suffered as a child. Now, none of his colleagues know that he's suffering from this because he does a very good job at putting on a really brave front. But actually, what's been happening over the last couple of weeks is that he's been having a lot of suicidal thoughts, and he's actually taken 2 overdoses. Now, I think the point for leaders is that we never know what secret battles our colleagues or clients are facing. And sometimes, you know, that smile, that how are you, or that kind word of praise can have a really deep impact. And I know that it has for him. He's told me how his manager has responded, and we talked together about him accessing medical support as well. And then the third one is just an example of a friend of mine who has not been feeling like she's received kindness recently. She works for not in the third sector, in a telecoms company. And over the years, she'd had periods of anxiety. And since lockdown, when she's been furloughed, her anxiety levels have started to increase. And she tells me about the culture at work, which really lacks kindness. There's a lot of instruction without explanation. There's very rarely a word of appreciation. And she does not feel safe to discuss any of her issues with her manager. So I just thought it was useful to kind of use an example which shows you how people might feel if they're not being shown kindness. And I would imagine that you've all been in situations, not just with bosses, but colleagues, where you might have been going through a challenging time, and you might have had one colleague who's just been lovely. Maybe they know what's going on, or maybe they don't. And you might have also had just one of those difficult, cantankerous bosses. Do I sound like I'm speaking out of experience? Who have really kind of made the situation worse. And yeah, I just know that being kind can have a really lasting impact. If I just give you one example that's touched me a lot recently, this is about clients. 30 years ago, I volunteered on camps for underprivileged kids. And 2 months ago, I had a message from one of those young people who tried to track me down to say thank you for the kindness that we had showed her, because she was going through a very difficult time, and that she's really wanted to reach out and say thank you. So I just want you all not to underestimate the impact of those simple deeds, words, or thoughts. So if we are now going to look at the specifics, the first section I wanted to focus on was kindness in leadership and what the benefits are. Now, there's lots and lots of research on the topic which talks about improved health, in fact, even increased life when you're kind and received, length of life, sorry, when you are kind and receive kindness. But I also wanted to find out what my sort of peers' views were on this subject. So I canvassed the members of my Heart-Centered Leaders Facebook group. There's about 450 of them there, and asked them, in your view, what are the benefits of leadership? Kindness in leadership, sorry. And you may be able to guess some of the answers, the top answers. So what came out of those questions was that people felt that kindness in leadership meant that people feel valued. That was really key. And what happens when we feel valued? We're better motivated and we work better for the organisation. Secondly, they said that it made people feel trust in that leader, so that when there was a time of conflict or a difficult decision or action that that leader had to implement, they kind of knew deep down that that leader probably had their best interests at heart. And so therefore, it was easier for them to go along with whatever it was, the change that was needed. Thirdly, they said that kindness acknowledges equality in colleagues, regardless of rank. And I thought that was a really interesting point. You know, obviously there is hierarchy in every organisation, and, you know, we might feel that there's some benefits in that. But I also feel it's really important that every member of the team feels equally valued and equally important. So that was interesting. And then finally, this bears out the research as well. People were saying that kindness in a leader leads to happier, healthier, and more productive team. So I hope that has sort of given you, if you weren't convinced beforehand, I hope that sort of encouraged you to see what the benefits might be. So, I mean, it's all good and well to be thinking, let's be kind, but in practice, it's not always so easy, is it? It certainly wasn't for me. And so I thought it was useful for us to kind of just take a little look at some of the barriers. When I was writing notes on this, I found I was writing a lot. So some of the things I came up with was pressure, workload, tiredness, and lack of time. You know, we're working in an environment, you guys are working in an environment where more is being demanded for less time, less money. And I can feel, as I say these words, that you're all, it resonates with you all. And sometimes, you know, it just is quicker just to say no, or close the door, or pass it on to somebody else, or just give an answer that we feel is going to be quick. And actually, sometimes being kind takes longer. So we're looking at practical kind of barriers here. Also, sometimes, you know, we might avoid being kind because that might necessitate a really difficult, challenging conversation. Isn't it easier to send an email, letting somebody know what's going to happen and why, rather than having to have that conversation with somebody who you perhaps anticipate might be defensive, awkward, might be lying to you? That might kind of bring up resistance to being kind. And also, sometimes you might be given an instruction from above and you're told, right, you need to furlough these people, or you need to start a disciplinary with that member of staff. You might not even agree with that decision, but you may have to go and implement it. Now, actually, what I believe is that it's nearly always possible to be kind. And sometimes it's not about the action, but it's about how you do it. So if we think of, for example, organisations, large organisations that might have had to cull lots of members of staff, and the process might not have been particularly kind, there are still ways to do things. There are words you can use. You can tell your staff and colleagues that you're so sorry that this has happened and that you wouldn't have made that decision, if you're allowed to say that, or that you value them and that they'll be missed. So I don't think it's about avoiding difficult situations or doing the right thing. I think it's about how we do it. And a definition, I think I wrote it down here, of kindness I liked, that it was written on the Mental Health Foundation website, which is the charity that runs the campaign around Mental Health Awareness Week. I liked. It said that researchers suggest that kindness is a gesture motivated by genuine, warm feelings towards others. So with that example, we may have to sack or furlough a member of staff, but we can do it in a way that shows them respect and care. So if we want to look at some quick wins for kindness in leadership, I wrote an article on LinkedIn fairly recently called, I think it was the 3 A's. So I believe that making yourself accessible, available, and approachable to your staff is really key. I laughed at a newsletter I had from my daughter's school, where it said that the headmistress, as part of her open door policy, would be inviting pupils to come and get to know her between 8:10 and 8:25 on a Monday morning. And for me, that was none of those things. School doesn't start till 8:30. Who the hell was going to turn up at 8:10 to get to know the headmistress? So we do have to make ourselves available. And if that's not possible for everybody, we can nominate somebody else as our welfare officer or our pastoral care, just so that there is somebody available to offer support when needed. Something I've been noticing with some of the CEOs and leaders I've been speaking to the last few weeks is small tokens of appreciation. So one CEO, for her furloughed staff, sent a card, individually personalised card, to each member of staff with a positive quote on the front of each card and thanking them. And, you know, she had feedback to say how much that was welcomed and appreciated. Another leader I spoke to had delivered small hampers to their staff, depending on what your budget is. Another idea is a weekly call to staff, including furloughed staff. So again, you may not have time yourself to do all of those calls, but there might be somebody else that can do that. Just a welfare call, just to check in with them. And it's going to reap benefits, because at some point those staff are probably going to come back. And, you know, if we're not careful, they're going to feel a big separation from the staff who've remained. And we really want to make them feel supported and valued, so that when they come back, they feel part of the team and that they can get back on and focus on the common goals and purposes and deliver high quality work. I've added ensuring you let staff know that you're there for them. So this is along the same idea, but if you haven't got time just to say to people, oh, phone me anytime, it might be that you say, you know, on a Thursday afternoon, 2 till 5, please, anybody that needs to discuss any concerns or worries, I'm going to block out that time. Please talk to me. I can't promise that I will be able to act on everything, but I'll let you know what I can and can't do. I think people really appreciate honesty, and I believe that kindness isn't always doing what people want, but it's being open, honest, authentic, promise less, deliver more, those kinds of things. So those are some top tips for now. I could talk about this a lot longer, but I'm going to be staying on track, hopefully. So the next area is kindness to yourself. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I find when I'm talking to people in the third sector in particular, and of course that counts for local government as well, that people often find it a lot easier to talk about being kind to others. And then when we talk about being kind to themselves, people sort of start getting a bit uncomfortable and start wondering what I'm talking about. So yes, I'll just tell you that a little story. I only started recognizing that kindness to myself was important at the beginning of 2016. I had won a scholarship place on a global women's leadership conference run by the Aspire Foundation. It was 2 days. And for the first day, I was kind of feeling, oh my goodness, what am I doing here? I've got so much work to do at home. You know how it is. And then on the second day, they started looking at kindness to yourself. I was kind of looking around at everybody thinking, is this really a thing? I didn't know. And we had to do some interactive exercises. At one point, I started bursting out crying. I can't remember what we were talking about. And I realized that I was pretty close to burnout. I had a lot of responsibilities at home. My job was very demanding, and I had, how old was she then? I had a young child. She was young and demanding too. So at the end of the conference, we had to make 2 commitments. And one of them I made was to set up a youth homelessness project, which for those of you who know the progress, it's taken me 4 years to get to the point where we'd done it. And secondly, I decided to commit to learning how to take really good care of myself. And that started me on a bit of a journey, actually. But I have reaped a lot of benefits. Those of you who've got more time, another time I can have a chat to you about that. But some of the benefits I see in being kind to yourself is that it reduces stress. And I don't know for how many of you stress is an issue, but I would imagine it's quite a lot. As I said, you've all got heavy workloads and limited time and often limited resources. And you know, if you can reduce your stress, that will have a knock-on effect and increase your creativity, innovation, and focus, and the quality of your work. Also, there's indisputable health benefits. You know, a lot of research has been done about how being kinder to yourself will improve both your physical and your emotional and mental well-being. You'll also be calmer, which will mean you can be more patient with others. And also what I found was that my job became more enjoyable and it felt more fulfilling. So instead of focusing on my ever-growing to-do list, which just seemed overwhelming at times, I was actually asking myself, you know, what have you achieved this week? What's been a success? How can I give myself a pat on the back for just something small that I might have done today? Because I think if we only ever look at what's next to achieve, all becomes a little bit thankless and slightly miserable, if I'm honest. So I think it's really important to learn to cultivate more kindness to ourselves. Barriers to being kind to ourselves. I mean, again, I think there's many. Time is a key one. I think sometimes we don't value ourselves enough to think that we deserve our own kindness. Perhaps we see perfectionism as a virtue, which I completely disagree with. Perhaps expectations on us are really high, both externally from the organisation, but also perhaps we're putting pressure on ourselves to really achieve lots. I think sometimes we can take altruism to the extreme and, you know, be spending all our time trying to improve the situations of others, that we come bottom of the list. And it's not until we get ill that we suddenly realise that perhaps we should have carved out a little bit of time for ourselves. And then I also think that people are sometimes unaware of the benefits. For me, as I said, I didn't realise that that was a thing, that we were supposed to be thinking about being kind to ourselves. Just hadn't occurred to me. And then also, if we continue along that theme, I think, you know, a lot of us might have grown up with beliefs that say that we should be thinking of others first. Religion will often say that we should perhaps be thinking of others or God or before ourselves. And also, we might have worked within a work environment and culture that really promotes striving. And, you know, people are sometimes even crowing about how many hours they've worked and how little sleep they've had, and a bit like it's a competition. So I think there's several barriers out there, but I do feel that the tide is starting to turn. And in particular, I think now that there's more women leaders, and I'm not saying that kindness is exclusively female, because it isn't, but I think, you know, we've started to realise that some of the traditional theories around leadership, which were quite male dominated, it's not that they're not relevant anymore, but I think that they don't necessarily work as well as combining those values and skills with some of the softer skills that are more often attributed to women, like empathy, kindness, compassion. And actually, you know, again, there's a lot of research to show that once you combine those skills, you know, the performance of the leader and the organisation outdoes those who don't start to embrace kindness as a culture. So some quick wins. I've seen this issue important for a lot of people, which is setting clear boundaries. This is how to be kinder to yourself. And I think it's even more pertinent now. A lot of people are working from home. It's like, when are you supposed to be working? When are you supposed to be a parent? How do you define the two? And when on earth are you supposed to find a bit of time for yourself? So one thing I've done is I've started to try not to take any non-urgent calls or meetings before 11 o'clock. It's not to say I won't be doing any work till then, but I want to start my day in quite a powerful way that's kind to myself. And so some of the things I do in the morning, I wake up a bit earlier, do my meditation, I'll do my journaling and my gratitudes, and then I'll try and force myself to go for a jog, which is partly kind, partly punishment, or do a bit of yoga. And then I want to spend a little bit of time with my daughter. That's my boundary. So the first hour is mine. I know she's not going to get up by the time, you know, within that hour, so I'm not needed. Then the next slot of my time is for her. And I want to give her a breakfast, spend a little bit of time with her, get her set up with her homeschooling. And then I can give my attention to other people. So I think setting clear boundaries, that's also about, you know, if some of the staff are not working as hard as you think they could. Boundaries are about kind of having the courage to have that conversation, I think. That's also being kind. So you're not sitting there worrying about the fact that they're not going to have done whatever report it is by the time you need it. And when you've managed to set yourself some time for yourself, and I know some of you might be saying, You know, how on earth do I carve out some time? It could be 10 minutes, and I believe we can all find 10 minutes. The idea is to find something to do in that time which is dedicated for you and your well-being. And you'll know what that is. I mean, it might be reading a book for 10 minutes. It might be lying flat on your bed, staring at the wall. It might be going outside and jumping up and down and shouting something or other. Hopefully you haven't got neighbours. But it doesn't matter what that is, as long as it's something that makes you feel good and nurtured. So I think that is absolutely essential. Next tip is to try and follow your body's natural rhythms when you're working from home. I mean, we could try and do this in everyday work, but I think it's a little bit easier from home. So, you know, you may know that you're most alive and creative first thing in the morning. So try and organise your work so that you've got your difficult bits in the morning. If you, like me, find that you have a bit of a dip between 3 and 4 in the afternoon, I might choose to take my break then and have my exercise rather than taking it at lunchtime. I might prefer to work through. And then again with your sleep, you know, if you know that you need a couple of hours sleep before midnight, then try and be reasonably disciplined about getting enough sleep. And drinking water is another one. Okay, here's one I love. I've been working with a different CEO the last couple of weeks and she's loving it. It's cut down your to-do list. So you might all feel very scared, terrified at that idea. How can I chuck out my to-do list? I'm not asking you to get rid of it. What I'm saying is that if you're anything like me, I used to have a to-do list, which I remember it getting up to 75 points at one point. It was just crazy. And you turn the pages and it didn't really make me feel very good. So what I started doing instead was keep that 74. Of course, I would then, I shouldn't say of course, but then I would prioritize and put a star next to things that were urgent, important, not so important. But then I would make a to-do list for every day. So today I would make a list and I would have no more than 5 things on that list that were urgent or important that I needed to do today. Because you're much more likely to achieve those 5. You're much more likely to feel good about the fact that you've achieved those 5, which will then give you the momentum and will to do a bit more. So I really recommend cutting down that to-do list. Of course, if you can get better at delegating in the meantime, that also helps to chop down this to-do list. And you can also go through that list and say, do I really need to do this? Or is it just that it's just like an added extra? And again, you could make a separate list, which is kind of aspirational, that when or if you ever find your hour when you're twiddling your thumbs and you're looking for something to do, you go, okay, what was that little thing I wanted to have a play with? But otherwise, I think psychologically, those massive to-do lists are just not very helpful. Do something that makes you laugh. So that's another tip. It might be speaking to somebody that makes you laugh, watching your favourite comedy, or dancing around the kitchen with your kids. Whatever it is, I think it's really good to find something that makes you laugh. Take regular short breaks. And do you know, it only has to be 2 minutes. Get up from your desk, move, have a look at something other than your computer, stretch, and come and sit down again. Makes all the difference. If you can take 3 deep breaths as well, even better. And finally, my tip to be kinder to yourself is to start being aware of your inner negative narrative. Now, I think some people call it the monkey mind. You know, we have a lot of inner chat, and sometimes we are our own harshest judge. So, you know, we might have got to the end of the day and we might have done a piece of work that wasn't quite up to our own high standards. You might notice your thoughts are starting to say, for goodness sake, oh, you should have done better than that. If only you'd not had that break, spent more time on it, and missed breakfast, you could have done that piece really well, and then you wouldn't be feeling like this now. So the first step is to identify that those thoughts are happening and that you're being quite harsh. And the next step is to ask yourself what you would say if your best friend came and said that to you. So I'm sure you'll agree that if your friend came to you and said, oh God, you know, I should have not had breakfast, just worked through, and I could have done better, you know, you might say something like, for goodness sake, you've got a lot of pressures on at the moment. You're doing your best. It was good enough. Stop being so hard on yourself. And so if you can write those words down, the third step of the exercise is to read that back to yourself, so that actually you're giving yourself a kinder message. Why do we want to do this? Because it's a better motivator. You know, most people work better if they're encouraged rather than whipping themselves or being told how useless they are. So there are the quick wins for being kinder to yourself. So, oh, I was supposed to stop at the end of a section, and this isn't the end actually. So before I move on, I must remember that I wanted to ask you all, please could you rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 in how kind you are to yourself. So you'll see that a scale has come up on your screens. It does actually, if you scroll down, it goes up to 10. And at the bottom of the numbers, it allows you to press submit. So if you could all rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 when it comes to kindness to yourself, please.
Give you about 5 or 10 seconds to do that.
And I think Karen's going to be able to see the anonymized results.
I think I can even share.
Exciting.
We'll see.
Oh,
this is brand new for me.
fantastic.
I've never done this business, so let's see how we get
Excellent.
on. Okay, so if I give you another 2 or 3 seconds, if you haven't already done yours, if you don't want to, that's absolutely fine as well. Okay, and I'm going to close it off, and I think I can even share the results. Are you seeing the results?
Yes, blimey.
There you go.
We've got a 3. Very honest, number 3. And then we have 4 people who said 5. That at least you can feel good. I mean, even 3, you can feel good that you're doing something, aren't you? 5, encouraging. 6, I'm not sure if I can scroll down. Oh, yes, I can. Wow. We've got 1 on 8. That's amazing. And 3 on 7, which is also really good. So my next question is to challenge you a little bit and to think about something that you could do to nudge yourself up 1 point on that scale. So what could you commit to doing for yourself in order to nudge your previous rating up by 1 point? And I guess when we're thinking about this, we want to think of something that's realistic.
So this
Pardon
is
me?
If you've got Menti open and the code at the top of the screen, while Fran's talking, you can be putting in what your results would be.
Don't promise yourself too much and then you don't do it, because that just makes us feel even worse. So sometimes it's just the smallest things that we can tweak that can have a really big impact. For me, taking those, I do a 5-minute meditation and I try and do it every morning. And I promise you, I feel better after it. It's incredible. And I know that if I have done my jog, it's definitely not long, I also feel like my energy levels are better and my mood is better. So brilliant. Some of you are coming up with some answers. Thank you. Clear and concise communication and patience, considering how people are during this difficult time and how this impacts their work. So that's great. If this means that you're being kinder to yourself, then that's brilliant. Not so hard on myself about work tasks. Yes, be less of a perfectionist. Absolutely. You know, I really believe that if you choose to be a perfectionist, you will never be satisfied, because I think it's impossible to be perfect. So I think that's a great commitment. Perhaps you could actually review that situation in a couple of weeks' time and a couple of weeks after that to see whether it's just something you commit to now or whether you can start actually implementing. Another idea here, don't try and always have the highest standards when doing something perfectly isn't essential. Yes, I learnt a fantastic affirmation which has been really helpful, especially when I was trying to set myself the ambitious goal of raising, I think we needed to raise £1 million to set up the new project. And I would say to myself, I think this was from Marissa Peer, she's quite a renowned hypnotherapist, and she recommends the affirmation, I am good enough. And I think that's a great one, because we're not going to be perfect. The scale could be, or the way we judge ourselves, was it good enough? Another person, thank you for sharing, says, ensure I have boundaries between work and home life, even though work is in my home at the moment. Absolutely. I think it's even more important, sometimes more challenging, but great that you're going to give that a go. And another comment, to make time to get out of the house at least once a day and enjoy fresh air and currently sunny weather. Exactly. I really think you will notice the benefits. Thank you, everybody. They're fantastic.
We also have in the chat, somebody has suggested they book a holiday. Don't we always?
Yes.
Somebody else has said, be accepting you can't do everything perfectly.
Absolutely. Yes. Brilliant. Thank you. Oh, Den, delegate more. Yes. I can't see the rest of that sentence. What does it say, Karen?
Sorry.
Yes, Den, I think that's a fantastic commitment to yourself. And, oh, you know, we all know the challenges in delegation. We have to find somebody that can do the job to our satisfaction. And yeah, it's sometimes tricky, but I think having that intention and looking at your list and saying, what can I delegate off my list and who's the best person to delegate it to is definitely beneficial. So if we move on now to the third section, which is the trying to instill a culture of kindness in your organisation, then we, oh yes.
Give you a time check, you've got 10 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much. That's kind, I think we'll be fine. Some of the benefits of instilling a culture of kindness, some of them are obvious, others less so. It really improves engagement, retention, and it lowers sickness levels. If people feel safe, valued, appreciated, your fake sickies are going to go down because they're going to feel some loyalty to the team and to you as a leader. Fewer disciplinaries and complaints. I was delighted that in the last 5 years of me being CEO at Youth Concern, we had no disciplinaries, no complaints from staff to each other, and 100% staff retention. So, I mean, and that was not the case the previous years where the culture was split between kindness and not kindness. I know it's difficult to prove absolute cause and effect, but I know it made a difference. It also develops a more supportive, cooperative work environment. So you're going to find, as we alluded to earlier, that when you have difficult changes that you need to introduce, people are going to be more on board because they believe that you're not just making these changes out of the pleasure of control or power or for your own ego. You know, you've got the interests of the team and the beneficiaries at heart. Another benefit is that, you know, when we were able to develop a culture of kindness within our team, that rubbed off onto our clients. Our beneficiaries could sense that we all felt quite close and they felt safer and they were more likely to trust us. Oh yes, and staff, new members of staff told us, and each member of staff mentioned how welcomed and supported they felt. And that wasn't just by the managers, it was because we had helped the team embrace those values and behaviours of kindness. The final one, just want to point out, is that it was easier to have all staff focused on a common vision if we had that culture of kindness. Barriers. Oh, there's lots of barriers here, aren't there? So if you have a team with any challenging members of staff or any negative members of staff, you'll know it can be a bit tricky to be kind to them and also to encourage them that being kind to others is of benefit. I think the perceived time investment, you know, if we were all to say at board level, let's develop a culture of kindness, people might be thinking, oh my God, how many new systems or processes does that mean we're going to have to start? I think sometimes culture of kindness is not valued or role modelled from the top. I still come in contact with, you know, board members and managers who are anything but kind. And I think sometimes, you know, the people who are the managers, it might not be their strength. Communication, supporting staff, they might not see that as a strength in themselves. So they might be a bit reticent to put it out there that they're developing a culture of kindness. Some quick wins. I think it's about being clear about your expectations from the team at the outset. You know, when we had problems the first few years in my post with certain members of staff, after we'd managed to resolve those problems, I knew that we never wanted to bring anybody into the team who didn't know how to use communication in a productive way. They don't always have to be positive. They can air their concerns, they can have a grievance, but I needed them to know that they could do it and must do it with respect, professionalism, and going through the right avenues. So, you know, there was some backbiting and there'd be people that were making up lies about other people, usually me, because it's fun to make lies up about the manager. And I had to be very clear that if that's how they were going to proceed, the organisation wasn't for them. And if they wanted to rise up in the organisation, they certainly weren't going to have any chance of doing so unless they decided to take a leap of faith and start to communicate in a more respectful, kind way. And it actually did work. And after some difficult conversations, we got to the point where there was a lot more trust between the two of us. Supervisions as well. I think it's really important that we challenge behaviour that is not kind. So that might include, if we take it to the extreme, discriminatory behaviour, bullying, people who are just trying to use humour in a way that is unkind and is really not appreciated, people not taking the time to show a little bit of care and support for their colleagues. You know, we started putting it as a target for those people in their supervisions who we felt just weren't being a supportive colleague. We want that to happen because we want to be able to provide a good service for our clients at the end of the day, don't we? And also we want it to feel a pleasurable place to come to work. And it isn't if you've got people who are backbiting and all that kind of nonsense. So that was that. And I think the third thing, quick win, is to emphasize the benefits of kindness in a culture. So, you know, really, you could even have some training on it. I offer training if you don't want to do some yourselves, but you know, you will all know you have an innate ability and gift to be kind, and we all know what it's like to be on the receiving end. And I think it's just important to remind our staff of the benefits and ask them what have they noticed from people in the past, managers, colleagues, when they've been kind as opposed to when they've not been, and try and get them on board. Just wanted to end with a quote from the Dalai Lama, who I love. And he says, be kind whenever possible. It's always possible. So I haven't yet answered the questions that you posed at the beginning, which I will now, if Karen reminds me what they are. And I'd like to talk about the issue of seeing kindness as a weakness. And there are a couple of other things that related, if we've got time, Karen. I can't hear you.
Said there's going to be me in the meeting, wasn't it, who got that wrong? There's always someone. In this case, it's me. So it was a question about why is kindness sometimes perceived as a weakness? And I think related to that, how can you be kind to your staff without them effectively taking advantage of you?
Yes, so I'll answer this quickly because I can see it's 3 minutes too. You know what? Kindness needs to be used with discernment. That's the first point. You know, we don't want people to walk all over us. And I think it's kind actually to tell our staff when they are not performing well or when they're being unprofessional. It's kind to ourselves because we want them performing well. It's kind to them because we're being honest, telling them what the expectations are. You know, we can be strong and kind. It's just about putting those messages forward with respect and empathy but you can still be firm. And I think that relates to the second point. You know, I had a member of staff who was particularly unkind to me, made up lies. She had stolen money and made out that it was my disorganized accounting or something, that and went to the trustees and told them. And I knew what she'd done, and I felt angry and hurt. And, you know, we're all human. I didn't feel like being kind to her. However, when I needed to go through investigation, I knew I wanted to treat her fairly. I did not want to stoop to her level. And equally then, when several months later, we couldn't find evidence to get rid of her, she then developed breast cancer. I had to find genuine empathy for her situation, setting aside, you know, my feelings of the past and focusing on her and doing the right thing. And didn't mean to say I was soft, you know, and I had my eye firmly on her from then onwards. And she wasn't able to take advantage of me again. But I think discernment is key. I hope that helps.
Fantastic. Thank you, Fran.
I don't know if we have time for any questions, but I'm very happy to answer any that I can't answer now afterwards. And I can send them all out to everybody, you know, I can answer them to you, if that's helpful, Karen. So if anybody has any questions that have come out of this, please do feel free to let Karen know. And I will be delighted to respond. I just also want to let you know that, as I said, I'm offering leadership coaching, and I also do consultancy and also team building days or sessions or hours. One of the subjects is kindness, but a lot of other subjects too, stress at work, and I can put together bespoke sessions for you if you're interested. So please feel free to contact me. But it's been really lovely having you all. I'd have preferred to be able to see all of your faces, but Karen, thank you so much for organising all the technology and inviting me. It's been a real pleasure.
Okay, well, thank you. I'm sorry. Yep.
It's a question, haven't I? What has been, please could I ask you all, what has been your top takeaway from today's session? That would be really useful. And
you want to pop it onto the Menti? I've just popped it up on the screen for you.
That'd be really kind. And then hopefully it's 2 o'clock now. Hopefully I've managed to stay within time. Thank you, guys. I hope you found it helpful, and I hope you found it a good use of your time. I wish you all the best for the next few weeks of lockdown in particular. I know you're all facing a lot of challenges, and I look forward to speaking to some of you soon.
Excellent.
Can you see some of the answers? Oh, they're coming up, aren't they? Brilliant.
Beginning to come in. Well,
fantastic.
I just want to say a massive thank you to Fran for coming along. I think it's a really important topic that people very, very easily forget. Is really key, especially at the moment. And like I said at the very beginning of all this, Fran's session is the first of a number of sessions. Next week we're starting one with Boxmind that's going to be done by Sophia Hobbs, their training lead. And it's going to be the first of 3 sessions all about mental health in the workplace and how do you support your teams. And I think some of the questions raised today about returning furloughed workers, etc., is relevant to that. You can attend one session or you can attend them all. That's completely up to you. When I send out the recording from this, which I'll do probably tomorrow, I'll also include the link where you can find out more. But feel free to register for all of them or none of them. It's up to you and as much as your time permits. But I think, Fran, we've got quite a few coming up here now.
We have.
Some of them. That'd be great.
Do you want me to read them out, or do we need to finish?
No. If people need to sign off, feel free to sign off.
Okay, okay. So some
then please.
Great comments here. Thank you all for sharing. Being kind to myself is key to being kind to others. Absolutely. Real life anecdotes to illustrate how kindness has made a difference to you, Fran, and the people you've worked with. Excellent. I'm glad that was helpful. Showing kindness to members of my team on furlough. Not something I had thought of. So a really important tip. Thank you. Excellent. Kindness is not synonymous with being a walkover. Yes, true. And thank you. Being strong and kind is always something I'm concerned about. So thank you for the tips surrounding how to do this. Great.
We also have on kindness needs to be used with discernment. And and that it was fab. And being kind to myself more. The 3 A's is something I'll do my best to implement them with my team. Challenging unkindness just because it is unkind. Oh, I like that.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah.
That's mine. I'm thinking, yeah.
So if people are able to hang around and you've got any questions for Fran, but feel free to unmute yourself or anything you'd like to say. But if you do need, obviously, please do leave. But thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, Fran. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Nope. And we watch the numbers drop. It's always interesting.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Fran. Much appreciated.
You're very welcome. It was a pleasure.
If you want to have a look in the chat, there's some really nice comments from people if you haven't already.
Oh, great. Yes, let me have a look. Chat. Let's go to the top. Book holiday, yes. Accepting you can't do everything.
I'd love to book a holiday.
Yes, exactly. I actually have booked a holiday, but only in this country for October. So we shall see. I only had to put a small deposit down, so.
Yeah, you'll be fine by October, all being well.
Yes, I think so. Do you ask people to rate the session? Because that might be helpful for you guys.
I was going to send out a
great,
a quick little response thing.
Great.
And you're happy for me to share the recording with people who attended, I assume?
Absolutely. I don't mind it being shared more widely if that's useful for you.
That would be great. Thank you.
And I wouldn't mind sharing it.
Yeah, absolutely. No problem at all. I'll work out the technology behind
as well. Yes.
First time.
Challenging behaviour isn't kind. Kindness needs to be. Yes. Oh, that's great. I'm just going through. Great. That's nice. Kind comments.
It is indeed. Well, I will send this through to you, and thank you very, very much for coming along. Much appreciated. And like you asked me to, I'll share email addresses and such like as well.
Are we still recording?
We are still recording.
Can I ask you a question if you stop?
How to
How do